Hello, everyone. Welcome to Flatcar office hours of the 10th of July. It's hot today, and my camera is also decided that it doesn't want to work today. So, yeah, it is what it is. I think everyone here know each other, so I think we could skip the introduction round and just go through the agenda items. So Krish got a demo for us. How to
Yeah.
run Flatcar is on desktop, which is cool.
So what I've been working on is adapting Flatcar Linux to build a hardened multi-level workstation operating system that's more general purpose than Chrome OS, for example. So the same way the Core OS folks adapted Chromium OS, which was meant to be used for browsing and for like specific form factor devices to be used in cloud deployments. I've tried to adapt Flatcar for the desktop and use a lot of the security properties that it provides. So um, I'll share my screen. So I made a fork of the scripts repository, and basically what I've done is I've gone on and added, if you see, so initially, what I did is I actually built the whole image from source, including the packages and drivers needed to run it on desktop. So I used the i3 window manager. So I modified this and created my own ebuild core meta package CoreOS dash desktop, and I used that throughout wherever it was relevant, and I added all of the dependencies for i3 and such. Now, what I've been working on is actually packaging this as a system extension. So you could, the same way with Podman and Python, we can just write to a file and then the system extension gets loaded. The same thing would happen in this case as well. So I've already worked on that, and what's left is really testing that because I haven't tested that yet, but it builds perfectly fine and all of the dependencies are resolved. So, yeah. But in the sense of what it looks like when you actually um, get it going, it just looks like i3, and it's actually just Flatcar Linux. So it's very stripped down. You don't have all the dependencies you would have if you were running like i3 on like a Fedora machine or like on Debian. So it's really minimal, and you get image-based updates once. In the case of the way I did it in this implementation, you would have to on Nebraska like serve the images with i3 as well and the drivers needed for running it in like a VM on your laptop. But if you do it as system extension, then I think you would only need to have the drivers in the base image, so it would be like less modification. But you can have everything else as system extensions because that's one of the features that we've all been working on, right? So I feel like that's quite exciting because you get a lot of the properties of Chrome OS while it's still extensible. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So where are the binaries for this located? Bearing in mind I haven't played with sysext very much yet.
In the case of the system extensions, I can share my terminal. Do you see my terminal?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the same way that like you have the Flatcar like Podman system extension, you also have the one for i3, and you also have the one for Python because I believe like somebody made the PRs for Podman. So if we were to include like an option for people to load the like GNOME, for example, even right, you don't need to have that by default, but you can have it opt in, like we have like Podman and we have Python. So I don't feel like you necessarily have to have it in a different repository, a different organization. You can also just have it be opt in, unless that's a problem from the side of actually serving it. What do you think?
I meant more that so the i3 binary, where does that live in the file system, and how did you build it for? Because presumably it's
Um,
not in USR bin, right?
in the case of my first implementation, it is.
Okay.
In the case of the SysX implementation, it works the exact same way that like Podman. So you have it here, like inside the Squash FS image, where you the same way it works for like Podman and Python.
Could you maybe open the Flatcar i3 underline contents txt? I think that would answer Chewy's
Mm,
question, because that basically shows what's in the sysx.
yes, that would be good. Okay. Sorry if I'm still catching up because I've not played with SysX yet, but I take it that doesn't get merged. It's not overlaid on the regular USR bin, right?
It is.
Oh, it
It
is.
is.
Okay. Is that not a problem if the contents conflict with the base, or are we just assuming it's a common base?
In this case, I don't like. I haven't tested this fully out, this system extension way, but I don't think it should be a problem because it's still compiled against like the same, like I'm working with like the latest alpha release, for example. So it's still working with the same package set as if you were to compile other things as well, right?
Yeah. If it could be done, in a separate prefix, do you think that would be useful to make it more independent of the base?
Honestly, I'm not completely sure because I think we are not doing that. Are we doing that for like Podman and Python and other things? If we
Well,
aren't, I don't think it makes a lot of
Pod,
sense to do it.
Podman is like a static binary, isn't it? So it doesn't need many other files.
Well, in Python's case, Python requires a lot of
Yeah,
files.
I'm not sure how we're doing Python yet. Maybe someone else can say, but yeah, it's something I'd like to look into anyway to make these more independent.
We can.
That's kind of an interesting question. It touches the whole prefix story, which
Yeah.
is currently still like wildly experimental. But I mean, with Chewy basically having an expert on exactly that topic on the team, that might change. So, Krish, there's like a small README on prefix builds, and so what that would allow you is you'd be able to use the Flatcar SDK to create a SysExt, an overlay that is entirely independent from the base operating system. So while you would probably use the Flatcar SDK and the prefix wrapper scripts to build your SysExt, it is entirely detached from the distro because it will ship its own libraries like everything the whole stack, except for the kernel. It would live in its own subdirectory, and you could use the very same SysExt, like your desktop SysExt, on basically any Linux distro that supports SysExt. So that's kind of the benefit.
Yeah.
Regarding the the general connection between a system extension and an operating system, that's also kind of a field where we're still experimenting. And so what we're currently seeing is there's probably like a minimal base layer of things that we need to ship, started with the OEMs. Without the OEMs, we wouldn't run on clouds. So that is very much connected to each of our releases, and that's basically strongly dependent on the operating system version. It would never differ in version from the operating system, and we actually make sure of that because we pin the SysX to a specific operating system release. With Python already, the question is, does it really need to be system dependent? Right now it is, because the whole prefix story is still very much experimental. But Python, for instance, would be a premium candidate to be ported into a prefix eventually at one day. And that's because you don't really need a full Python update of the full SysX for operating system updates, because there aren't as many dependencies. Right now, you have to, because we have this dependency and because we overlay operating system files. So if we, with the Python SysX, if we by accident overlay like an important operating system library, it needs to be exactly the same version. So this is why this right now is a system dependent SysX, but it doesn't need to be that way. For other system extensions, it's easier to answer. I think Podman doesn't have strong operating system dependencies. It has a few things with C libraries, so that's still important. But then you have the entirely different story of Docker and Containerd and Kubernetes, and I think K3s and everything, all of these things. And those are entirely independent, right? And we ship those via a entirely different, it's not just like a different way of laying out your SysX. It even uses entirely different different update procedure. So those SysX from the bakery use systemd sysupdate, which works very well with SysX in general. And then, so I mean, future looking, if you decide to pursue this further and use Flatcar as even just as a build system, right? The SDK as a build system. If that becomes a prefix build, what you would gain from that is that your immutable desktop layer would be provisionable on basically all major future Linux distros, because they support systemd SysX, they ship it, and that includes Bluefin, right? And you would also have a means to update your prefixed desktop layer in your own cadence. Like if you want to release a new feature, you just do it because you don't depend on the operating system cadence. So I think that's those are exciting thoughts to consider in the future direction.
What do you think are the biggest challenges when you're trying to like use a container host that's designed for servers now, right, on the desktop? Because take Fedora CoreOS, for example, right? Like Silverblue and CoreOS use a lot of the same underlying technologies like OS3, right? And even if you just take like driver support, like that's not a hard problem to solve. Like even in this case, I was able to like add support for whatever is needed for the QEMU like VM as well, and even for like Intel like integrated like graphics. So I don't feel like that should be a challenge. What do you think is the biggest challenge?
It's pretty much undiscovered country. So I think as we move along, we're discovering those challenges. The whole SysX world only just started a few years ago, and we're only just kind of mapping out the areas where that could have an impact. And I think we're taking a direction here that hasn't been taken before. So it's kind of impossible to say right now. We will encounter those challenges as we go along, right? It's important to keep in mind, or at least it's important to consider that you might want to keep the desktop separated from the OS layer, and then you'll just avoid a whole category of problems, right? if the OS can update independently of the desktop layer and the desktop layer can update independently, we would virtually have the same situation that we have with containers right now. And from the operating system point of view, we are used to handling those workloads. Like this is then again a known problem, and it's I think pretty well solved by a number of distros. In regard of with regard to how to develop, publish, and maintain a desktop layer, I think that is new and exciting.
I think one issue might be the firmware. To support a wide range of hardware, you're going to need lots of firmware, which has grown very large these days. Distros are struggling to fit it onto their sort of live images. And I mean, you could try putting it in a sysx, but I think it might not be available early enough in the boot process. So it would then need to go in the base, which would obviously inflate the size of our image. But yeah, maybe there's ways around it.
I wouldn't worry about that too much. So the earliest point in time where you can access sysx is the moment you enter the rootfs. Like when you leave the RAM disk, the initRD, and all of the download parts, and that's part of Ignition. All of this runs in the initRD. After that's done, your sysx are basically stored on your root file system, and then you pivot root into your actual root. And at that point in time, you could merge the sysx. I think we're doing it really early in the boot process.
Okay, that sounds good.
What do you think made it fairly, maybe I'm completely off point, but what do you think made it possible for like Core OS to get its like a lot of the technologies from Chrome OS? What do you think made that possible, even though again, like they also face the exact same problem, right? Which is that one is designed for the desktop and one is designed for running server workloads.
I don't really think that Chromium OS was designed for full-blown desktop. So it basically just a very thin layer of operating systems that runs the browser. You even have like a very small range of screens and GPUs that you absolutely required to support, because I mean Google more or less controls the manufacturing, so they're basically making the definitions there, and so I think the desktop layer in a Chromium OS is very, very thin and probably easy to remove.
I see. So do you think that's why CoreOS had it easy in some ways? It was easy to remove off that layer?
Definitely, they won a lot. So they looked at Chromium OS, they looked at the AB partition updates that were used back in the day. They looked at the way this is updated, and I mean, same way as Android phones, Chromebooks are basically devices that you can just throw out in the wild. They don't need any maintenance. Most, if not all, of the state is in cloud storage, so you don't have any local state. There's a lot of similarity between a Chromebook and the Kubernetes node.
So would you say this is the most similar to projects like Silverblue and Bluefin?
I'm not familiar with either. Sorry.
Me neither.
Like Fedora Silverblue.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and that's to me the whole point of the situation, is that we don't know really well this kind of container of desktop OS. So that's a bit challenging for us to, as Thilo mentioned, to see what would be the issue in the next month, in the next years. To me, I'm a bit concerned about how we should communicate about this, because yes, even if it sounds cool to have a desktop OS, I'm just worried about users saying, hey, you're going to invest sometimes on this and no more on containers. So I just would like to be sure and really, since from the beginning, to be clear about the situation, about the position of Flatcar regarding this topic. And even from a maintenance point of view, even if it's a sysx image, it means that we have all the dependencies baked into the scripts repository. So it means we need to maintain those. And even if they are not meant to be used in the generic image. to be used as a SysEx image.
Yeah.
So we still
Yeah.
need to think about this.
Isn't one of, from my understanding, isn't one of the goals to be more in sync with upstream like Gen 2, right? So
In terms of the packages
packages, yeah.
that we already ship. So we're trying to align with basically all of what we ship to Gen 2 upstream, up to the point where actually sometimes we're a little more up to date, and then we're contributing back to upstream stabilizing packages. The goal isn't to basically embrace all of the tens of thousands of packages that Gen 2 ships. So the issue that Mathieu is raising here is right now the base OS image has 300 packages, right? You can build it in a little under 2 hours on a fairly recent machine. You can test it in a little under 30 minutes with a QEMU setup on a fairly recent machine. As soon as we grow that, all of this will increase. And the problem with that is this will directly impact the turnaround time, because right now for each of the PRs to scripts, we need to go through the full tests, right? And we want to, like, this is something I absolutely want to have in place. And this is why the prefix idea is so desirable, because prefixes would basically allow you to build the very same thing just for the desktop layer. You don't care about the underlying operating system, right? You only build your integrations and your tests only for the desktop layer, and you know that this layer works on any given operating system. And it's nice to split concerns this way.
I think that might be my fault that I remembered an earlier conversation we had, Thilo, where you said we wanted to converge more with Gen 2, and I thought that possibly meant using the upstream repository directly, but obviously only us, not pulling in everything.
No,
but
no, actually, this is one of my moonshot dreams.
yeah.
So when you look at the repository layout, the scripts repository layout in particular, you see the overlay part where we have stuff that we want to control directly, the kernels and their systemds in there. Very few hand selected packages are in there because we want to update those in any case, and we don't want to necessarily rely on Gen 2 upstream or even be in lockstep with Gen 2 upstream. But that's only a few packages, maybe, I don't know, 80-ish at most. We're trying to reduce them going forward for the majority of packages. And those are in portage stable. Those we very much like to be in lockstep with Gen 2 upstream. And so my moonshot dream here is at some point, we don't even need a portage stable anymore. We only have a custom keywords configuration that allows us to unmask unstable Gen 2 packages, but portage stable is in fact Gen 2 upstream. So all of the packages and all of the e-builds and everything is bit by bit identical, because that would be a dream to maintain, I think. But we're quite a bit away from that, although we're constantly improving. So Krashimir drives most of that work. He's on a well-deserved vacation today, but yeah, so that's kind of the direction.
Yeah, but about extra packages, definitely right, because it took me like 5+ hours to actually build with the on my laptop, which is not too bad. Like my laptop's hardware is not horrible, and it was quite some time I had to wait.
Yeah, no, I mean building a desktop layer, and you wouldn't need to rebuild the operating system, right? If you only built a desktop SysEx, that is more akin to building the SDK, which takes several hours than it is in terms of volume to build just the core operating system. I think one of the since we touched this, one of the great features of Chromium OS that CoreOS was inspired by is this very minimalistic approach. Like, what's the minimal set of things that I need to support upper layers, but at the same time to kind of sandbox myself and abstract myself so upper layers can do their own thing. And so I would see a prefix desktop upper layer to be a great addition, like to the container workloads that we support. But I think it would make it would put a lot of strain on the project and on a desktop layer if we would integrate it into the base OS or even move it closer to the base OS.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, so like I guess Chrome OS was awesome in the sense that gave you that layer that actually mattered, and then you can just take out everything that is like the desktop
Yeah,
stuff.
cool.
All right.
That is true.
Any um is there anything else do we want to add on that, or should we move to the next item?
I really enjoyed the discussion. I hope this gets some traction with the Bluefin folks as well. And having a common desktop layer that is prefixed in some, I don't know, user local share Bluefin desktop would be exciting. For the Flatcar part, I would already be excited if you manage to put Python in a prefixed sysex and that actually works. And then we have path problems again, but I guess that's fine.
Uh, I think Sam put a comment in the chat, which was that for this desktop layer, there would be a lot of desktop apps, right? I don't think that should be a problem because you have Flatpak, right? Like,
For instance,
even for instance, yeah, like even with Fedora Silverblue, I think Cyan uses Fedora Silverblue.
Ye-
Like, you just
ye-
use Flatpaks for most things, right?
I used to, but for me, I rarely was dependent around the Flatpak apps. Though there is, I mean, when I used to use Silverblue, that is like 4 or 5 years back. Back then, I was primarily so for Fedora Core or Silverblue, it's easier because you still have the access using RPM OS3 to all the RPM packages. So you really don't care. You can just do an RPM OS3 install and you get the package. But then not all Flatpak apps are installed, so then it becomes very tricky. They're not lot. I mean, not all packages, I guess, are there on Flatpak. So then it becomes a bit tricky. So yeah,
You,
given if you're using at a desktop, it's a very different use case because you would use it from day to day life, and then you would need people have different workflow, different way of things, so you would need different desktop apps. So that's a different again problem to handle. Yeah.
do you use like regular workstation now?
Yes, I use a regular workstation now. It's I mean, since because I remember I tried with Cork and all setting up things, but it was getting a bit too tedious. I mean, back then Silverblue was a part of my work, so it was easier. But then when I joined Flatcar got the to get things done on Flatcar was important than Silverblue. So I moved to like the Federal Workstation.
That makes sense. Yeah, like all there's all these small like annoyances with using like Fedora Silverblue, right? So those are the kind of things that I think is also a UX problem that needs people to work on it.
that comes way later. I think finding a good architectural solution for the desktop layer in a prefix is the challenge at hand. But I like the direction this is taking, so I really enjoyed the conversation. And I hope other desktop folks jump on. Like I would love to see Bluefin
The
folks.
Bluefin folks want to use Flatcar as the base. Like George was saying, he wants to use Flatcar as the base. He was talking about yeah.
George in particular, I've chatted about this a little bit. So, and imagine having like a distro independent system that could build low sysx, and then the sysx would run on any of those immutable distros.
What do you think about just running like the even a desktop layer just in a container? Like remove all of this like
Uh,
prefix stuff.
it has container operate. I think. many of the new packaging formats, Snap, Flatpak, TriDot, and they ended up being a mixture of everything, just because you run into very exciting issues when you're trying to put things into namespaces that aren't meant to be in namespaces. So I think SysEx might be the cleaner approach, at least for the base layer of things.
I agree.
All right.
Yeah,
This
I know there were some images a few years ago when you could just do Docker run with privilege mode and host speed, and it sort of worked. I haven't tried that on Flatcar.
I can and report back.
I might give it a try because you only need Docker and just run with with pid host and all the stuff, and it should sort of give you a VNC um, uh, endpoint basically.
Oh, also one more thing, like building the Flatcar images, like even without like the desktop layer, can often be time consuming. Like I said, like 2 hours, right? Often. So, like, I don't think there's much of a way to like speed that up, because it's like you compiling from source.
Yeah.
So, do you have any recommendations for like how to go about like setting up like a Jenkins server? Maybe there's a program where they give you a lot of cloud credits, or
Mm, yeah, I mean, cloud machines are nice, but if you have a reasonably broad uplink, I think a reasonably modern machine locally can build you an image from scratch in under 2 hours. If you have a fast local, like my new laptop builds Flatcar in 53 minutes from source. And if you use a release tag, so some release that we actually put out, then you'll benefit from our binary package cache, and you don't even need to build, but only download the binary packages and put them in your file system. It's transparent in the build process, so it would just do that if it figures out their packages. So, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think our friends from Akamai last time we had this sync office hours. I think they shared way to get a few credits.
Oh, true,
Might
yeah.
help. Yeah, they were presenting Flatcar on Linode, the new. It's called Akamai right now.
But in general, bare metal is better than virtualized. I/O is important. So if you create a build machine, it's not that much in terms of CPUs. You should have, I don't know, 4 to 8. Hyperthreading is fine, but it needs to have a really really fast I/O disk NVMe ideally. So that gives you a lot.
I do on my Gen 2 building in a temp FS. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah. So in that case, you need a lot of RAM.
Yeah, I can also share my setup that I have with a small Nook sized thingy. If you'd like.
that would be great.
I have a Core i3 Nook sitting right there in the corner. It's a 12-core machine, but it was very, very cheap, actually. It's got a fast NVMe in it and builds Flatcar in 83 minutes from source. So that I/O seems to be the factor. CPU speed, not so much. All right, we're 50 minutes in the meeting, and we have the release planning still up. Cyan, you want to take over?
Sure. I'll be quick. 1 minute. Let me see. No, I guess this is the one. Yes. Yes. So heading over to the releases. So just to give an update, so we did a release last week. It was a maintenance release that we did. It was primarily to patch for the OpenSSS CV. And if you notice, so what we basically did, so what we did was, I'm not sure why it's not loading. I'll open this one. Yeah, so what we did was we primarily patched, we upgraded to one major version, but it's primarily synced with Gen 2. So we picked up the Gen 2 changes and did the release, and so the OpenSSH CVs are patched now. Uh, for the next set of releases, we are planning to do one in the month of August, the first week, and we would be doing a major release for all the channels. One thing I wanted to ask folks that should we cut out the next release for uh, cut out a new LTS next month, or should we wait for a few more months? What do
So
you think?
I've checked the previous LTS, and we published it first in October last year, right?
Yes, October.
So there's no need to rush. Maybe we can get some more exciting things into stable. I'm looking at Docker 25 or so, and then make an LTS from that. I noticed that with our previous LTS, we were running into issues because we had a pretty old Docker version, and they don't want to be in that situation again. So that would
Hmm.
save a lot. And Docker 24 it's not deprecated or anything, but you notice that it's slowly getting older. So yeah.
Yeah, right. And even regarding like Kashmir's patches, um, I'm just thinking when once it hits stable, maybe then we can cut off. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So for the next stable, this is again a notice like folks, if you have worked on something, please drop your comments down. We are still empty, but I'm planning to start somewhere toward the ends of the month. I'm not really sure why these things are not opening up the side plates. But yeah, anything that you've worked on, please comment it on the issue. I do plan to start drafting something in towards the end of the month, and have a blog post ready before the release. Yeah, and there have been a couple of package series low hanging ones that we need to update. So that is something the team would be looking into, and nothing major other than that. Yeah, and heading over to the tactical board. So I do see here in the in progress a few of the issues have not been worked on for some time now. So folks, if you it would be great if you can look through those. And I was also thinking that if we could, it's been some time that we did a bug smashing. So maybe like once the team returns somewhere around September or August, and when we have a full strength of the team, we could do a bug smashing day. Yeah. Anything else that folks want to add that they would like to update on?
Not heard it called a bug smashing day before. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, we just take a few bugs and just smash them up. But yeah.
It's an 8-hour Jitsi call where we tune in and out and basically ask stuff and write docs and go through issues, and one's always there. So if someone wants to tune in on that call and ask something, either from us or from the community, and other developers tune in and out. It's very exciting.
Cool.
Cool. Anything else that folks want to share?
Just a quick question, because we were talking about it, and I've seen it in the to-do list for the next release as well. Are there any volunteers for the Docker upgrade?
I'm not sure yet, but we would need to check towards the end of the month. Because I know Chewy and Adrian's are busy on a few things. Matthew is also busy,
Yeah.
and so we will need to see. But yeah, towards the end of the month, we'll see if we can do that because it would be good to have that out quick. But yeah, is that on this list?
Yeah. Both Docker
This list.
and Go are on the list, and
Yes.
it's about time. Like they absolutely there's an absolutely good reason why they're on this list.
Regarding Go, I've been doing some upstream work on improving their e-classes, and I think it's not clear to me why Flatcar sort of made its own Go packages, but I'm guessing it might be because it didn't cross-compile at the time. But
Correct.
now I think it does.
Yeah.
So maybe we could go back to Gentoo's packages there, and that'll make things a bit easier.
That is exactly why I started with the cross compilation work in Go. Yes, that's a very good point. That's an opportunity right there.
Okay, I'll continue in that direction.
Awesome. You will automatically bump into at some point into Docker because the reason for let me think. The reason we have the old Go version is because the current Docker version doesn't build with the new Go version.
Right.
So if you're updating Go, everything will break because Docker doesn't build anymore, and then you'll have to update Docker anyway. So maybe someone else picks it up on the line, and they're there when you're there, or yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else, or else I'll hand over to Daniel.
Well, I guess we are almost like an hour. No, yeah, almost an hour in the call. So if anyone wants to raise another topic, or we should just like say goodbye. All right. So thank you, folks. Thank you for the demo, Krish. I hope it was useful, and I like the enthusiasm. See you in 2 weeks.
Right.
Other
Thank
than
you.
See
that,
you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
bye.
Bye, folks.